Good evening from New York. On this program last night, we revealed a list, and that list is still growing, of massive, global, well-known, multi-billion-dollar companies whose owners benefit from the so-called small business tax cuts Republicans want to extend for the richest 2% of Americans. President Obama wanted congressional Democrats to take a stand prior to Election Day so that, even if, or especially if, Republicans filibustered in the Senate, America would see congressional Democrats fighting to extend just the middle-class tax cuts that benefit everybody but the rich. And it's also to see Republicans holding those tax cuts hostage to extort the extension of those small business in name only tax cuts. This would also prevent Republicans around the country from campaigning on the slogan that Democrats are letting taxes go up next year. It was a move widely seen as the Democrats' last real chance, because poll after poll has shown voters, even in battleground states, would back the Democrats. And so in our fifth story tonight, none of that will happen. The spokesperson for Senate Leader Harry Reid telling the Associated Press the vote will wait until after Election Day. Congressional Democrats appearing to have decided they would rather return to their districts to campaign on the premise that voters already know where they stand on taxes. A position that seems somewhat tenuous given how today's House Democratic victory on a massive jobs bill is being virtually ignored by the news media. President Obama today blamed the delay on the tax cut vote on Republicans. A spokesperson telling the Plumline blog, quote, Republicans in Congress have made it clear they would rather stall and obstruct instead of giving working families the assistance they need. The American people will be reminded of that every day. Of course, it would be much easier to remind the American people of that every day if every day they actually saw Republicans stalling and obstructing. Senate Republicans have not filibustered Mr. Obama's extension of middle-class tax cuts because Leader Reid never brought it up for a vote. Senator Dianne Feinstein telling the Hill newspaper, quote, it should not be done before an election, it should be done after. How come? Because voting for tax cuts that don't extend beyond the first $250,000 in income would be, quote, subject to manipulation. As if not voting for tax cuts that would include all income for all Americans below $250,000 is somehow immune to Republican manipulation, as if anything was. And what about the House? The Hill reports that Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to vote before Election Day, even if the Senate will not. But Majority Leader Steny Hoyer does not want House members to vote if the Senate will not follow suit. This afternoon, the House Democratic Whip, Jim Clyburn, and Caucus Chairman John Larson offered somewhat conflicting explanations for the Democratic reluctance to make this an issue now. Mr. Clyburn suggesting some voters, or possibly some members, don't even understand the tax cuts.
If you make $251,000, you get the same tax cut for the first $250,000 that everybody else that get $250,000 or less. The only thing you pay the increase on is that $1,000, not the $250,000. And I think that one of the reasons there's been some recalcitrance out there is that people have not made that clear. So I want to make it clear today that we're proposing a tax cut on the first $250,000 of all Americans' income, and we will apply the other, that the Bush numbers apply to all income over that.
There is unanimity in the caucus around what Jim Clyburn has just said. The anxiety comes from what our erstwhile colleagues across the building will do in the United States Senate, and that's where the discussions still emanate from.
MSNBC political analyst Howard Feynman, now at Newsweek, soon to be at Huffington Post, has been tracking this story on the Hill today and trying to get a correct definition of the term erstwhile for Congressman Larson, but we'll skip that for the moment. Howard, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
All right, why did Harry Reid duck this fight with Republicans, and does that mean it's dead in the House as well?
I think it's dead. As we were saying on Tuesday night, it looks like they were going to flinch, and the reason is that they haven't developed the issue. For Congressman Clyburn to be out there trying to explain at this really late date that fundamental question, that fundamental factual issue, just shows you how poorly the Democrats have tried to explain this, because they've been afraid of it. They're afraid to talk taxes in toto, which is what they need to do. They need to explain that, yes, as Clyburn says, it's incremental income. They need to explain that however many heroic small business people there are in the country, a lot of the benefits of the top rate reduction go to very, very wealthy people and to big corporations, as you've been reporting on the show. They haven't done it. And because they haven't done it, they're afraid to take up the issue at all.
But it's 12 words. It's Bush tax cuts for the rich, Obama tax cuts for the people. Isn't it?
That's a hell of a good slogan. I don't know why I haven't heard it out of the White House. It's a reluctance to play offense. It's a reluctance to get involved in the tax issue because a lot of moderate Democrats, a lot of blue dogs in the House, a lot of candidates in red states, both in the House and the Senate, are afraid to talk taxes because they don't want to talk spending either. That's one reason. The other reason is I think the Republicans are going to try to find in district after district some local small businessman who will go out and say, I'm being hurt by this. But what the Democrats need to do is find an average person in that district who will be hurt by the fact that his tax cut is not going to be maintained.
What do they say when the polling numbers, the Stan Greenberg poll that was given to congressional Democrats a week or two ago, that the issue was a winner for them, and the SEIU union poll in the battleground states, and found 63% support for preventing Republicans from extending those tax cuts above $250,000? How do the Democrats answer to that? They suddenly don't believe in polls?
Well, they don't have one answer. I mean, I was talking to Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, who's a moderate Democrat, no flamethrower by any means, but he's got in his state Joe Sestak running for the Senate, the Democrat. Sestak very much wants a vote on this because in Pennsylvania, to take one example, it's a clear winner. So Casey was telling me he would really prefer to have a vote, and he's a so-called moderate Democrat. But there aren't enough people in enough places willing to do that in enough states, and Harry Reid has got his own personal problems back in Nevada. He's under siege. I mean, he's thought of as a great inside maneuvering guy, but right now he's running for re-election, and he doesn't want to have to defend right now any tax vote. And David Axelrod, the political spin master inside the White House, is now telling everybody, don't worry, we'll have the issue because we can talk about what we're going to do after the election and what the Republicans want to do after the election. As you point out, if you're going to promise to do something after the election that you could do now, why should anybody believe that you're going to do it later?
And it's more than that. But what about, I took one government class that was a laboratory in college, and we knew political theater is 3/4 of the game. Take credit for it, blame somebody for it, or announce that you're going to attend the dedication. And Senator Harkin said to you that Republicans won't let us do it. I mean, what about the political fallout that would be there if Republicans were on TV not letting Democrats pass tax cuts for the middle class?
No, I was in the hall talking to Harkin about that. And again, Harkin is a liberal Democrat who normally would be gung-ho to do this. But I was astonished by what he said, that the Republicans won't let us do it. The Democrats are in charge of the Senate. If Harry Reid wanted to bring up the bill that would allow tax cuts to be kept for everybody under $250 and raise it on that incremental amount, Harry Reid could bring it up, the Republicans would filibuster it, and there would be a vote. That could happen if they wanted to do it, but there aren't enough Democrats in the caucus of Democrats in the Senate who are willing to do it. And there's nothing more I can say is that they're afraid to do it, and they're afraid of the ads the Republicans are going to run against them.
MSNBC political analyst Howard Fineman, also of Newsweek, soon Huffington Post. As always, thanks for your time, Howard.
Thank you, Keith.
Let's turn now to MSNBC contributor Chris Hayes, the Washington editor of The Nation magazine. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
When you were on here last night talking about the political angle of the small business in name-only tax cuts, and we wanted you to come back to now that the Democrats have decided not to make a fight of it. Why do Democrats expect voters to fight for them when they won't fight for the voters? And why hand their that's a Freudian slip, why hand their supporters this anvil and say, here, hold this till after the election?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an idiotic calculation. I mean, we should say that we should be specific about this. I mean, I'm sure that both it looked like the House leadership, Clyburn, certainly Nancy Pelosi, and a lot of Democrats did want to do this. I think the White House wanted to vote on this, and so I think this is a sort of subset of the Democrats, the sort of usual suspects of blue dogs, who didn't want to do this. So we should be specific about exactly who is essentially holding out against this. I mean, I think what happened is in that caucus meeting, you had a critical mass of people who are in seats where they're imperiled say, look, and this was something that someone said to me, that an aide to a Democrat who's got a very stiff challenger. He said, we just want to get out of here without taking any more votes. And, it reminded me of the exact inverse in 2002 in the run-up to the Iraq War, right? the Republicans pressed their advantage. They scheduled the authorization for the use of military force before the election. And I remember Democrats making the opposite argument then, which is that we have to take it off the table. We have to take the war off the table. And the point is that you put things on the table to get elected. That's what, that's the way politics works. You give people things that you are standing for. And I think this kind of like defensive crouch just, it's really mind-boggling.
We just want to get out of here without taking any more votes. Well, if that's your attitude, they will get out of there without taking any more votes ever in their lives.
Yeah,
yes,
right, exactly.
Boehner said last month that when pressed, he would probably, he didn't say it in these words, but he was essentially saying if pressed, he would cave and vote just for a big hunk of tax cuts for everybody else if that was his only option. Last night, when we did the report on the small business owners that the Republicans claim are left out of the Obama tax cuts, that they include multi-billionaires, some of whom are funding the Republican push for the very same tax cuts, shouldn't even the most conservative Democrat, the biggest blue dog, love to have this ammunition? It's not just a question of, well, they're a little tentative. Or they're throwing away some of the best material they've been handed in 40 years.
Right. I mean, in politics, right, you're looking for this Venn diagram, which is things that are good policy, the things that you believe in, right, and things that are popular. And a lot of things don't fall in that middle intersection. I mean, we should raise energy. We should raise the price of energy a tremendous amount so we forestall global warming. That's not popular. I understand not wanting to take a vote on that, all right? But this is something that is popular. So what's perverse about this logic is they've already taken a number of unpopular votes. Every one of these incumbents voted for a healthcare bill that, let's be honest, is not popular right now. So if you go back with the record you have now, why would you not want to take a vote that will be popular as the last thing you do, the last thing that registers in voters' mind? And the only explanation, which is what Howard Feynman was saying and what I've heard as well, is they're scared of the 30-second ads, that no matter what the actual substance of it is, your amazing 12 minutes last night, which I thought was fantastic, voters in, some district, some marginal district aren't going to see those 12 minutes about what small businesses actually are. What they're going to see is a 30-second ad saying so-and-so voted to raise taxes.
Do a 30-second ad of what those small businesses are. I mean, the list, you can do it in 30 seconds. You use the 12 words I said before. Bush, tax cuts for the rich. Obama, tax cuts for the people. It isn't as complicated as they're making it out to be. And when Senator Feinstein says that the vote on the vote that failed to extend the tax cuts for income over $250,000, that would be subject to manipulation by Republicans. Literally minutes later, Greg Sargent at the Plumb Line had this quote from the GOP. By refusing to address this issue, vulnerable House Democrats can now add the Obama tax hike on small businesses to the long litany of job-killing policies they will be forced to defend between now and Election Day. Paul Lindsay, the guy who said that, he's right, isn't he?
Right. Well, it's the most predictable thing in the world, and this is what everyone has been saying. And even people who are not sort of given to hysterics. I mean, Josh Marshall, Talking Points memo, has basically been tearing his hair out on screen over the political sort of malfeasance of this whole thing. But absolutely, they're going to manipulate it either way. Plus, you already have the record you have, right? I mean, you already got high unemployment. You've already voted for bills that are likely not very popular in your district. That's not going away. So why do you want to pull back now, right? And go say, well, remember the health care bill that you don't really like very much, that everyone's talking about that's unpopular? Let's just talk about that. Let's not talk about me fighting for tax relief for middle-class Americans while they try to give tax breaks to the hedge fund people that got us into this mess.
The assumption here is that the Republicans will now run no tax ads between now and November 2nd.
And of course they will. They'll barrage them with them.
Chris Hayes of The Nation. Always a pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
The Republicans say to the Democrats, we'll see your cowardice and raise you some stupidity. The GOP pledged today to the people of the United States, yes, we ran the country into the ground from 2001 into 2009. And to quote John of Orange, we're not going to be any different than we've been.